There we go. Okay. All right, welcome this morning to our Board of County Commissioners meeting. As we always, we start with a prayer, reading or thought, and the Pledge of Allegiance. We look to the audience for anyone who would like to participate and either offer that prayer, reading, or thought of the Pledge of Allegiance. Any volunteers that would like to do that? Pledge. Ben's got the pledge. Anybody for a prayer, reading, or thought? Okay, seeing none. Oh, what's that?
We can do the prayer.
Okay.
Maybe it's right. There we go. Our beloved Heavenly Father, we come before Thee humbly this day with gratitude to assemble as a free people to discuss and administer in the affairs of Utah County. As we begin this meeting, we ask for Thy divine providence to guide us in our decision making, that we might be mindful of the citizens that those decisions affect and act in ways that are responsive to the principles of freedom and liberty that allow us to pursue the dreams and desires of our heart free from oppression and fear. We express gratitude for Thy hand which has created and given us this nation, for its direction. We pray that we can continue to follow and be inspired in ways to protect this nation, in particular Utah County and its citizens, that they might find prosperity and hope through our actions. These things we pray humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Please repeat the pledge after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get into our consent and regular agenda, we have a public hearing is to present the Friends of the Public Health Awards to the 2019 recipients. Ralph.
Oh, thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate your time. One of the best parts of the job is the opportunity to recognize those who have partnered with us in some way for public health here in Utah County. Much of the public health work isn't done by the Public Health Department. It's done by community partners who work to improve the health of our community and do so much. And so each year during April, which April has the National Public Health Week in it, we'd like to recognize an individual and an agency. I'm hoping my voice holds out here. That has contributed to public health. In this case, we have kind of a co-individual award, but also an award to an organization. The organization we'd like to recognize is the Utah Valley Quilt Guild, and Elisa Larson, their 2019 president, and Geraldine Powers, the 2009 service chair, are here to receive this award. If they'd like to come up, they've also had a few other members of the guild that probably ought to come up as well, so to recognize them all. And I'll just share a little bit here about the guild with you, if I could. The Utah Valley Quilt Guild was organized in January 1982 as a nonprofit group to promote the art of quilting through education and social means. It is affiliated with the Utah Quilt Guild, which is a state group that includes chapters over all the state. The guild began with 75 members and now averages about 250 individuals. The members meet monthly at the Senior Center in Orem, and the program features lectures, demonstrations, and projects of interest to the quilters. It is an open group with a nominal yearly fee for anyone who desires to join. One big purpose of the group is to give service and volunteer skills to the community. Each year, the Guild donates fabrics and makes quilts to share with a variety of people in need. Some of the quilts have gone to homeless shelters, women's shelters, immigrants, police units, foster children, and a special love is the Welcome Baby program in the health department. The quilts are made by individual women in their homes, or the Guild members come together to mass produce a large number of quilts in one day. This year, about 40 members, along with 13 sewing machines, lots of thread and fabric and pins and needles, came together at the County Administration Building in Provo, and they finished almost 70 quilts in one day. Those quilts were walked across the street to the Utah County Health Department offices. The women take turns holding office on a volunteer basis. The officers conduct and coordinate the business of the Guild. By nature, the members of the group are very generous with time and talents and contribute a lot to Utah Valley. There are still several in the group who were original members. The Welcome Baby staff visits close to 2,000 high-risk families and high-risk infants a year. These are often infants of teenage mothers who have no support from another family, or may have other high-risk concerns, abuse concerns, or substance abuse. And as our nurses visit these families to try to help in those situations, it's great to be able to give them a quilt. And often it's the only quilt that they have for the infant in that case. A Welcome Baby goal is to give each family a quilt and teach families about the importance of tummy time and literacy. The Utah Valley Quilt Guild over the last several years has provided close to 500 blankets for our Utah County families. And so we want to recognize the Quilt Guild for the great work that they do and the help they give to our Utah County residents who are most in need. And then we'll give you a chance to say something if you'd like to. We lost our background, but I think we're okay. Yep, just right here. Got Eric here taking some pictures. Just let why don't you let just let Commissioner sneak by you. Sorry.
Are we all nice and tall?
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Sure.
Please, thank you.
We are very honored to receive this award and to be recognized today, and it is because of the wonderful women in our guild, many who take supplies home and donate and just work and are thrilled to give something to whatever program we choose each year. And I want to say a special thank you to Geraldine Powers, our service chair this year, who headed up our service day. Thank you so much.
Question for you.
Sure.
They mentioned 70 quilts in one day.
Mm-hmm.
How many people did you have there to do that?
We had 40 people, and some of the quilts could have been a little bit started before. They are easier quilts that are tied and sewn with larger pieces, some of them. We have, would one of you just hold one up?
Yeah, let's see it.
We
I
have
just asked that question because
Yeah.
whenever my wife or my mom does that, the quilting frames stay up for like months at a time. So I was wondering how they do it in one day.
Yes, these are a little bit simpler. Sometimes the families that receive them are going to be placing them on the floor
Yeah.
for their babies to lay on and exercise. So these are some of the examples. So these quilts were probably started at home and finished on service day.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. We are
Thank
very
you.
honored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really, I can't overemphasize what a valuable service that is for our Welcome Baby program, and to be able to present high-risk infant with a quilt that they otherwise may not have is really a wonderful thing. Okay. The Friend of Public Health, the individual, in this case co-individuals we have for Friends of Public Health this year are associated with the Clean Air Task Force from the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce. As you know, the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, on a business end, initiated a Clean Air Task Force to try to help educate our citizens about clean air issues here in Utah County, and was established to counteract some of the high short-term air pollution problems we have. The task force focuses on cleaner air for a better quality of life. They seek solutions through coordination with local government agencies, elected officials, and community leaders and businesses. Additionally, they strive to educate and motivate community members, including students, on measures they can take to reduce pollution to benefit not only family health, but also the economy in Utah Valley. The task force seeks to educate and inform the public about clean air issues through reaching people through community events, clean air education through local schools, education through online resources, and alerting task force members to state legislation related to clean air. Activities of the task force include acquiring and placing multicolored air quality flag sets in many schools in Utah Valley and all Provo fire stations, posting air quality information onto social media and local electronic billboards, educating the public about new car smog ratings, supporting the passage of the county limit on idling, encouraging state and local governments to support clean air measures, and sharing the information with each other on how to improve air quality. And so we now have, due to some of these efforts, we have smog rating visuals about vehicles designed and distributed to all our county vehicle emissions and maintenance shops. They also as Commissioner Ivey talked to the task force members about problems of dust pollution in South County areas from gravel pit operations that were harming the important fruit economy there as well. They expressed their support for finding a solution that would balance the needs of the fruit growers with the miners, and we're pleased when the county commission were able to do that in 2017. They hope that will help on the north end as well. They continue to promote the use of our mass transit systems and the development of more electric vehicle charging stations in Utah County. Cities have been encouraged to look for opportunities to start bike sharing programs as well, and some of the cities are looking into those possibilities. The two individuals we want to recognize are Donald K. Jarvis and Ned C. Hill. Don couldn't be here today, but I'll just read this short thing about Don. Don lives in Provo, Utah, where he is the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Chair of Provo City and Provo City Sustainability and Natural Resources Committee. He's the Secretary of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce Clean Air Task Force. He's also a member of the Utah Citizens Council, and he was actually the president of the Clean Air Task Force for a number of years. He's a trustee of Centro Hispano, past president of the Provo Rotary Club, a member of Provo City's Agricultural Commission, and the LDS Earth Stewardship. He publishes quarterly editorials in the Provo Daily Herald. His wife, Janelle, conducts the Provo Sustainability Committee's annual school air quality campaign, working with Breathe Utah and reaching all of Provo school districts, 15,000 students. He's a retired BYU professor of Russian. He lived and worked enough in Russia and Eastern Europe to know how dangerous environmental pollution can become in countries lacking a free press, citizen activism, and democracy. It's just amazing to me how much a retired individual can contribute to our community as they like to. And even though Don's not here, I'd like to give him a hand. But Ned Hill is here. I asked him to come up. He bring his lovely wife as well, Clara Lynn, and if you like, okay. Sometimes we like to stay out of the limelight. So. But I'm glad Ned could be here. Regarding the Clean Air Task Force, which Ned is now the current president of, he walks the walk and talks the talk. Ned and his wife drive 2 hybrid vehicles and recently installed 26 solar panels on their roof. Ned has been a professor of finance at BYU, Indiana University, and Cornell University. He has authored 4 books on financial management and published 80 articles in finance and other professional journals. Ned has served on many boards such as the Utah Information Technology Commission, Morgan Stanley Bank, Alcatel USA, Beneficial Life, and Academy for Creating Enterprise. Ned is also active in community service and church service. He not only serves on the Clean Air Task Force, but many others such as the Provo Sustainability Committee and the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee. He's also served as chair of the Utah County Volunteer Care Clinic from 2009 to 2011. He has served the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as stake president and as mission president in Moldova, Romania. Ned and his wife, Claralyn, have celebrated 50 years of marriage. Hobbies include bird watching and choir. And again, what a wonderful thing it is when somebody who is retired gives back to the community, as Ned does. And for that, we'd like to recognize Ned and his contribution to our Clean Air Task Force. Again, we'll ask the commission to practice healthy lifestyles and get their steps in and come down and have a picture. I told Ned he didn't have to speak, but if he wanted to, he was welcome to. So.
I'll just say a few words. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to work with Ralph in this capacity. We're trying to get as many people in the county involved as possible. So we have representatives from Provo, from Orem, and we added Lehigh and Vineyard, and let's see, American Fork now are on our committee. And we're trying to get representatives from all over the county. So if you can use any influence there, have them send a representative to meet with us. We also have Nephi involved. I know they're not in the county, but they sent someone last time. It's amazing how much we have in common with the previous group that received an award. They talk about blankets. We talk about blankets also. They're blankets of air, bad air that come into our valleys that are not harmful much in themselves, except for what we add to it, through our exhaust in our cars, through things that come out of our home, furnaces and water heaters and so on. And we're trying to help people understand that clean air is not just a health issue, which it is, a very serious health issue for many people, but it's also a business issue. To attract more businesses to our area, one of the things that people are concerned about is clean air. The Utah Foundation did a study not too many months ago where they asked citizens, in a fairly large sample of Utah citizens, what are the most important issues? Number 1 was affordable housing. Number 2 was clean air. So that's an important thing to work on. And when I say we're also you mentioned the Welcome Baby program. My wife helped start the Welcome Baby program many years ago. She's an attorney and also a child advocate, and so she helped do that. So we have a nice little combination of things here. Well, thank you very much, and appreciate all you do as a commissioner. I know how much hard work you put in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I'm sure there's lots of quilting that needs to be done. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, we'll move to our the rest of our agenda. We've got a number of items on our consent agenda and our regular agenda that are published items. We will move both the published consent and regular agenda items all at this point in time to to either be to a consent agenda, meaning that they are ratified, approved, or agreed upon, and then we'll go down through and build our agenda where we'll pull things off from the consent to be talked about and discussed. If at any time somebody from the audience would like to talk to one of the items that we're talking about, please just come up here and state your name. So on our consent agenda, number 5. No, I'm sorry. I think that was all taken care of, right? Do we need to?
If we could put it on regular, that way we could address the changes that have been made.
You want to hold that one then? Okay, because I thought there was a whole bunch of emails, and comments on there, but I thought at the bottom it said everything was taken care of. Okay, we'll hold that then. Okay. Number 13, there needs to be a signature line at the bottom of that agreement. I think if we have that in place.
Actually, if we could continue 13 and 21 for 1 week, some additional issues have come up, so if we could continue those two for a 1 week, 13 and 21.
You okay with that, commissioners?
Yep.
13 and 21,
I have
continue.
number 11.
Number 11,
Would like
hold
to,
number 11,
I'd like to table number 11.
table number 11. If we do that, do you want to table the other one as well?
Is there an accompanying?
Both in the same space.
There,
11 and 16.
yes.
Are you fine with that, Commissioner?
Hmm?
Okay. We'll table number 11 and 16.
14 would also be a one table.
Okay. All right. You right with that, Commissioner? Table that one? Okay. We will need to continue items number 22, 24, 25, and 27 for 1 week. That was asked, and I don't see Peggy here, but that was, oh, there you are. Okay, we good on that then? Continue that. Okay. So those will be continued for a week. Now moving to our published regular agenda. It's been proposed that we strike for more discussion number 3 on our regular agenda. Fine with that?
Yep.
Okay. If we could hold number 5 for some discussion. If we could hold number 9. And on number 10, court, I'm looking for court. Are we okay to leave that on consent with the amended language? Or would you want to talk about that? Can we leave it on consent with going with the red line changes? Okay.
And
good.
for, just for public record, that's B9 insert, we're inserting the word wildfire before fire response, correct? Is that the
No.
major change, or is there additionals?
There's additional.
There's some additional changes. Do you want to just hold that? Let's
Not
just-
one. I mean, that way we can just cover them.
Let's just hold it. Let's just hold that so we can go through it. Okay, I think that takes us to, is there, on consent, that we have on consent, is there any public comment to the ones that we have consented to, agreed to, ratified, or approved? Okay, very good. All right, we'll move then. Looks like you know which one it is.
Yep, number 5
Number
on
5.
consent is Ben Vanoy Attorney's Office. You're right, there was a couple comments made. The funding clause, the non-funding clause comment It's not need to be included. So you were correct. The clarification says don't add the funding clause, or don't add the non-funding clause, sorry. There was one other provision we wanted added in there just to incorporate JUB Engineering's response to the RFP as an attachment. So that's it. If we could approve it with that additional provision, I think we're good.
Absolutely. We've got that included here with the hard copies.
Yeah.
With their response. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and a motion be your.
Move that we approve regular agenda item number 5 with the changes suggested by County Deputy Attorney Ben Vanoy.
Consent agenda, right?
Oh, that was consent agenda item number 5.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second to approve and authorize the, as stated in number 5. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay. All right, number 5 on our published regular agenda is to adopt or deny an ordinance to amend the following sections of the Utah County Land Use Ordinance, Section 3-18-A. This
I
one
think
deals with
you
some
held our
setbacks.
item number 11 on consent.
What's that?
Didn't you hold item 11?
Did we hold, I mean, we'll go back.
Tabled.
That's the, we tabled it.
Oh, you tabled 11 and,
11 and 21,
oh, thank you.
11 and 16.
or 16
And
and
14.
14.
Morning,
Okay.
Commissioners. I just wanted to give you a little background information on the proposed ordinance change.
Can you make sure and state your name?
Sorry, Greg Robinson with Community Development. Just a little background. The Utah County ordinance has always maintained a separation for structures containing farm animals to occupied structures. That separation has changed from time to time. Currently, it's 50 feet. In working with the applicant, staff is proposing verbiage that will allow the applicant to accomplish what he'd like to do on his own property, but still maintain some protections from possible nuisances for adjacent property owners. The proposed language will eliminate any separation requirements for an applicant from occupied structures to structures housing farm animals on their own property, but will still maintain that separation requirement for farm structures housing farm animals to adjacent property owners' occupied structures. And we also are proposing to remove the word maintains, which will eliminate the possibility of existing structures housing farm animals to be retroactively in violation of that ordinance as well. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the proposed ordinance as written, and staff is also recommending approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
So a couple of questions that I have, since it's adjacent properties,
Yes.
and it's 50 feet, and I may not get all the feet correct on it in the way of from boundary lines and property lines and so forth, so correct me if I'm wrong on it. But as far as I understand, there are opportunities for somebody to build a farm structure up to 5 feet of their property line. Is that correct?
The current setback requirements for side and rear setbacks are at 5 feet. This would, for a structure that is on an adjacent property owner, or any structure that is closer than 50 feet to an adjacent property owner's occupied structure would be under this ordinance. So basically, you could still build within 5 feet as long as you're still 50 feet away from an occupied structure on an adjacent property owner.
So, okay, so my concern is that hypothetically, somebody builds a farm structure 5 feet from a property line,
Mhm.
and now we have it that it's 50, you have to be 50 feet away from a dwelling, not from another farm structure, but a dwelling site.
Right.
So now this property owner will in essence be able to enforce that 45 feet away policy into somebody else's property?
So, this would only apply to people that are building or those structures housing farm animals, not to adjacent, like to somebody wanting to build a dwelling or an occupied structure. So basically, if the occupied structure is there first and the adjacent property owner wants to build closer to, like, within that 50 feet for an occupied structure, they can do that. It only regulates the person wanting to build a farm structure after an occupied structure is already there.
I don't know if that's clear in how I'm reading it, though, because as I read it, it says 50 feet. Is there a way we can put language in there that would allow that to happen so that it's clear?
We can look at that. We can definitely.
'Cause I see what you're saying. What you're saying is that if you have a farm structure at 5 feet from the property line and somebody, the property owner next door wants to build their house within 15 feet of their property line, that they would be able to do that. Is that
That's true, yes.
okay?
Now, but taking that line of questioning to the next step, I think, you know, really the intent of this regulation, I think, is to protect the dwellings from the farm structures.
Right.
And so in this case, you're only protecting existing dwellings. You know, someone, for example, could have a permit pulled or could be intending to build on their property, and unless it's being occupied, they're not protected at their building rights there for a dwelling.
That's true. However, the property owner would have the ability to choose whether or not to be closer to that farm structure if they
Sure.
wanted to.
But the protection that enforces it has gone away. Now, I guess the only question I have is, under the current, prior to this amendment, does that same dilemma exist, or does someone's building rights already protect it?
No, so any farm structure currently would still have to be 50 feet away from any existing dwelling. I guess, yes, that still would be, in effect, the way you're looking at it. If an existing farm structure housing farm animals was in place, a property owner that wanted to put a dwelling or an occupied structure closer to that would be able to do that, because this regulation applies to the agricultural buildings, not to occupied structures. So, in essence, yeah, what you're stating is still currently true. If someone chose to put their occupied structures closer to a farm structure that's already existing, they would be able to do that.
The only thing I'm trying to protect is somebody's property right adjacent, that they are not forced to do something differently than they would like to do with their own property. Where, you know, and I think you're addressing this, I just don't see it the only thing I see in the language is adjacent property. That was the text amendment, was adjacent property. So I'm concerned that somebody could put a goat shed up, 5 feet from there. I'll just use that as an example, and that becomes a farm structure. And then if we don't have some language in there, then a property owner next door wouldn't be able to build their house. And let's say they couldn't build their house, but anyway, they have to build it closer to make it work on their property for whatever reason of configuration. Then they wouldn't be able to build because they'd be in violation. But if we have language that's in there that says that under their discretion they can build closer, I'd feel comfortable with it.
Bryce Armstrong with staff. I think Greg's kind of explained it accurately. I think it currently contemplates that. I see what you're saying. We don't want to retroactively apply a greater setback for the neighbors to site their house. I think that's contemplated in the existing language, because they're really addressing the siting of a specific type of structure. And that specific type of structure is an agricultural structure housing animals, not the house. So it's only going one way. The current language.
But it does say dwelling. I mean, it does, although I know we're looking at the agricultural structure, it references the dwelling.
So the current language says no structure used for farm animals, specifically domestic livestock or meat and other fur-bearing animals, shall be constructed closer than 50 feet to an existing dwelling on an adjacent property. And so our interpretation is we're dealing with citing the structure housing animals. And if there's an existing house on an adjacent property, you can't be closer than 50 feet. If someone's coming in and builds it, if there's not a house there and they just build it 5 feet from the property line, then someone comes in and builds their house on their adjacent property, this wouldn't apply because they're not siding a structure housing animals.
Yeah.
They're just siding a house.
So where does it actually say that? That where maybe not in this ordinance, but somewhere else, that they can actually do that?
Is it
I believe it's contemplated, but
that's what I was gonna say, is it just contemplated
yeah,
that
I mean,
that's
we
the
can,
case?
if we feel like we need to clarify that, I think it's something we can add.
Rob Moore, County Attorney's Office. This says, this is specific to farm structures. So the construction of farm structures, because it refers to no, under 318A, no structure used for farm animals shall be constructed. Not a home, no farm structure. So this is specific to only farm structures. So if you have a dwelling, it means that you cannot put, the neighboring property has a dwelling, you cannot put your farm structure closer than 50 feet. But by the way, that's already contemplated in our current ordinance. This is a relaxing of our current ordinance, because in currently, you can't put a farm structure within 50 feet of any dwelling,
Any dwelling.
even on your own property.
It's
And
100, isn't it 100 feet currently?
used to be
Used to
100
be.
feet, now it's 50 feet.
Well,
So right now, what it would
175.
allow you to do it within, on your own
35.
property, you just could not put your farm structure, not your dwelling, doesn't apply to dwellings. So if a neighbor decides they wanna put their home right next to the setback, and there's a farm structure at 5 feet from the setback, that's their choice, and that would not violate this. Now, if it's the opposite, where you had a dwelling that's right at the setback line, and you decide to put a farm structure at 5 feet, that wouldn't work, because, again, you're within that 50 feet. The farm structure wouldn't work. The dwelling's fine. So this would not apply to dwellings. This only applies to
Yeah,
farm
I-
structures
I get that.
constructed.
I get that, but what about somebody that comes in that is looking at building on their property, and they're going through the laws and trying to figure out where you say it's contemplated that this wouldn't apply, but how would they know that it's not,
Well,
that it
it's
doesn't apply?
specifically stated.
Where's it stated that they
No
should build it?
structure, this is, again, the barn itself, the farm structure is what's being regulated here, not the dwelling.
So where in the dwelling side then of our ordinances that it says that they can build on their property even though there's a farm structure within 20 feet of their property?
There's no restriction in our ordinance that would prohibit that.
So because it's not restricted, then
Correct, and as you know, Utah law is that if it's not enumerated in our ordinance, then essentially it would be allowed, unless we've somehow restricted it in some way. So they would not, as far as I'm concerned, you can clarify that, but they would not regulate any dwelling units. This only regulates farm structures, this provision here, and it's actually relaxing of that standard, allowing you to do that on your own property now. It always had the effect of on neighbors currently, still does in the current language, and this would continue to do that in this new language, but it would take that restriction away from your current own property. You could have a dwelling closer to your house, or even right next to it, or whatever you want.
Bryce, with staff again, each zone has requirements for setback requirements from your own property line. And so that's where it's contemplated for a dwelling, an outbuilding, and you have to meet those within your own setback. It doesn't contemplate having to meet anything across the line. And so this is kind of specific for that situation. And
Okay.
it's kind of rare that we have those.
well,
So-
if you feel comfortable with that, I was just concerned that we were reaching across property lines and then enforcing based off of what somebody else does on
Yeah,
their
and
property, and that
and we-
concerns me.
I see what you're saying, and that's kind of why we struck the maintained, so there wasn't a question about, well, you know, maintaining is different than building. It contemplates, an existing situation, and so we wanted to make sure we were clear about that. Still protecting neighbors from these type of uses. I got a call last week about someone's neighboring structure housing animals and the smells, and so I think it was worth protecting maybe that impact of this proposal, still allowing someone on their own property to decide to have a closer setback.
That was what I was just trying to confirm. I understand that we're liberalizing someone's ability to put it closer to their own dwelling on their own property, but we are not granting a property owner who wants to build a farm structure any additional rights to get closer to the adjacent property line or adjacent setback than they've ever been.
Correct, yeah, they still have to meet their current setbacks as stated, and so everything's staying the same as exists other than on their own property.
Okay. Thank you. Unless there's any other questions, the motion will be in order.
Move that we approve regular agenda item number 5.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as stated number 5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, number 9 is to adopt or deny an ordinance to amend the Utah County zone map from the critical environment CE1 zone to the agricultural R5 zone. I know we've had a lot of discussions. Well, we had previous discussion. This has been the one that's continued. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet with the city on this. I've met multiple times with the city on this issue, try to work it through, and also with community development. So, Brandon?
Would you like me to give you a brief summary again of the proposal, or?
Yeah, if you want to. You think we should?
It's up to
Don't
you.
really need.
I don't think I really need it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, one thing I'll note, I did, after talking with you yesterday, there was some question about a water line, whether there were water services up the canyon. I did talk with Payson City Water Department today, and there is culinary water service next door to the Troyers property. The Strawberry Water Users Association has a home just up canyon from them, and they are connected to the culinary water.
So there is a water system that is.
There is a water system. They were quick to say that, you know, there may be water to that home, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's water available to other users in the area. But that was some additional
Right.
information that I found out this morning. So
Which is interesting. Thanks for that feedback. I didn't know that from our conversation yesterday. I think that Aaron's here. I wonder if maybe I should just kind of give a little brief explanation of what I did in going around. So I looked at the critical environment one. I did call the city, talked with the mayor multiple times, about this issue, trying to find out on a coordination basis what they were looking for in annexation, if there was any annexation plans. They said no. I said, do you see any in the future? And he says, well, it's hard to say what the future is going to hold. But currently, I think we came to an understanding that it would be costly for them to do something up that way, and that kind of prohibits them from going forward. We did talk about other lands around the area that they were looking at, either annexing into the city or not, what the traffic routes would look like, if it's going to be higher density use in the mouth of the canyon as well. And in the end, with the mayor, I just asked him basically kind of point blank, if you're not going to annex this in, we're the ones that are, will necessarily have to kind of modulate and regulate what's going on there in the canyon. And he said to me, he says, I wouldn't have any heartburn at all if you did something different up there. We would like to see things, preserved as much as possible. But nevertheless, he didn't feel like if we went one way or another that we have obviously the right to do so, and it was not going to affect him. So with that, then I started going down a path to try to figure out how we could find some balance in this. I think for me, I like to go back to historically and say, what happened? Where are we? How did we get to this point? What's happening? So back before 1970 something, 76, before 1976, the properties up in this area were zoned R1, and so there was a lot of, well, not a lot, there were some homes that were built on 1 acre, and they up in this area, and it was after 1976 that it was changed to a CE1 designation, and so for me that's interesting because you have neighbors who are on potentially 1 acre or well, 1 acre is the minimum that are right there. And so the thought was, okay, the CE1 designation, you know, fulfilled its purposes of saying you have to have 50 acres to build on a parcel of land. There was really no more development that was going on up there as far as we can tell, except for a few things. Now, they didn't have 50 acres. They had 27, or no, I guess it was close to 40, 37 acres or so. But because of a road that went through that was designated to them, they were able to split and get 2 lots up there, one below and one above on the road. And so I thought, well, why don't we look at maybe going critical environment 2 instead of CE1? Well, to have CE2, we would have to have a water supply instead of wells. And that's where this question comes up, that if we do have culinary water that's next door, not to say that you don't have access to it, because I don't know what that takes, or if you'd even be able to get that. But that is in place. There is water that is right there adjacent to the property, or maybe it goes through it on the road. And so that is there, and I was looking at, well, maybe we move it to a CE2 designation, which would allow for homes on 20 acres instead of 50 acres, and all the way down to 1 if it's a mountain development with that water supply. That was something that we kind of bounced around back and forth. I think ultimately we came in, and Brandon, you can correct me again, we looked at the RA5 and said, what if we had an RA5 up there, but we had some sort of, what was the potential of building that would happen up there? There was 3 property owners now that would have frontage enough to actually do some sort of building up in that area, and how many lots would be kind of subject to how much footage they have on that road, on the county road. Correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we looked at it again before the meeting, and actually, the Troyers they have next to that Strawberry Water Users property, I think they have another 4 or 5 lots that they could build on, and then I think it's really just the Morley property, the 56-acre piece that actually could be built on. The Mowers have some frontage. It's a 20-acre piece, but they only really have probably 70 feet of usable frontage on Nebo Loop roads. There's probably really only 2 property owners, besides the Carrolls, who already have a home. So there's probably only 2 property owners that stand to get additional dwelling sites through this if the property was rezoned. So.
And so with that, you know, I personally feel like we could, and then we also talked about what'd you call it, construction.
A development agreement?
Development agreements, you know, development agreements which would allow, you know, whatever is in the development agreement. If there's another home that's proposed up there, that would work. If we put in a development agreement, it would put a limitation on homes that could be there, even though there are some natural limitations now, just because of you have to have 200 and something feet of frontage to even build.
We talked about how development agreements can go more restrictive than the zoning. It can't go less restrictive, but it can go more restrictive. So you could, using Alpine City as an example, we rezoned some property there a few years ago. They could have had 20,000 square foot lots, but this body acted to limit lots to 1 acre. So that's something that could be considered here as well. So.
Yeah. So that's the process I went through. I'd like to find a way that we can, of course, you know, environment up there. Oh, and going back to critical environment, I did talk with the mayor about how the water up above is, you know, being diverted, and it's not necessarily coming down through that creek like it has in the past when in which it was designated that critical environment, and he acknowledged that there is a diversion up there in which they divert that water differently, and so those are the kind of the processes that I went through and looking at it. I would like to see if we can find some happy medium with this, and, you know, allow for whatever's being asked for, and of course they're here to make their pitch.
Let me just mention, if we, real quick, Robert Moore, County Attorney's Office, if we do change it to a CE2, it's not been noticed for a general plan change, so it would require us to go back to the Planning Commission to do that. We were just talking about that issue. This is not, because that's a change to a general plan as well, which we didn't notice that up, this issue. That wasn't contemplated at the time we were looking at the rezone. So we would have to go back and have that adjustment made into the general plan. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Troyer. I reside up the canyon just 1 mile at 1188-9 South Payson Canyon Road. I know I've talked you guys' ears off in the last couple of meetings, but today I've had a chance to sit down yesterday with the mayor and also put a bug in the ear with the city planner, Dave Tuckett, and then with, Jill Spencer's the city planner, and then city manager is Dave Tuckett. I've discussed with them their concerns and some of the letters the concerns they had in their letters. And it was interesting yesterday briefly. I was with Jed. It was interesting. I brought up the point, and we asked him. I said, the first time last year you presented a letter that you had signed, and I haven't seen the letter for this year, but I'm sure it's very similar to what was on the letter last year. He's like, yeah, it's the same stuff. I was like, well, you realize in that letter, there's things in there that you guys are doing that you're not wanting us to do, but you've already done. One thing that's a major thing that I can't stand is an eyesore when you first drive out the canyon is their power pole that they put in the same year that we put in our power across the street to our home, my sister's home. And we went underground with all of our power lines. Across the road, we're gonna continue to stay underground, so we will not detract from any of the pristine views and the nature that we love up Payson Canyon. Yet he put his head down and sort of said, yeah, I know, and I'm just like, so you're saying that you're complaining that you put up a power pole to block views, and we haven't done that, and you're afraid that we're going to do that, but we're not because we're going underground. So yeah, I'll admit I don't know everything that was in that letter, and he said that right to us, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So the only thing that I wanted to just bring up 2 bullet points, and I won't be too long. Just the first one, I have 4 children, 3 older boys that every day I get home, and they beg me, Dad, can we please ride our bikes down the canyon? Can we please ride our bikes down the canyon? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm a canyon dweller. I grew up Covered Bridge Canyon. I love canyons. For some reason, I just allude to be in the canyon. Covered Bridge Canyon, on the way up there is critical environment. And everywhere else in the county where there is critical environment, that is actual critical environment, the speed limits are much higher than they are up Payson Canyon. So we mentioned about being able to enjoy riding our bikes up that canyon. I just wanted you to remember that we afford the opportunity to ride up and down that canyon on bikes with a little bit of comfort because the speed limits are regulated because of the residential aspect that's up that canyon. Without the residential aspect, speed limits would be higher. I can guarantee that. And so the thing that, one, I do love that there's a residential aspect. Again, we want it to be controlled and responsible, but enough homes up there, 5 acres on one home is not, that's not crazy. It's all throughout West Mountain. And I think it's reasonable, but so I'll let my children ride up and down that canyon with me behind them. Granted, one day we would love to work with the county or the city to build a trail system up that canyon, but I can guarantee you I would never let them ride up and down that canyon if that was critical environment and the speed limits were any higher than they are right now. And so that's one thing that I just wanted to remind you that the residential aspects can bring a little bit of a comfort when you're up that canyon. Our security is heightened so much more than when we first lived there. We were always afraid of our homes being vandalized and this, that, and whatever. And just having a presence up there has made a huge difference in the security up that canyon. It's interesting, the moment I walk out, last night I got my hair cut on our front porch, and it's fun. You watch cars go blazing down that canyon, and as soon as they look up and they see a house and they see somebody standing there, whites in my eyes, they slow down every time because they understand, number one, there's a speed limit. Number two, there's residential aspect there and people slow down. Otherwise, I've been on several accidents up that canyon and rollovers where people are going too fast. And just a reminder, when people see homes, they realize, yes, there is some regulations here. I need to abide by speed limits. So that was the first thing I just want to bring up is that, the residential aspect, in my opinion, I think has helped bring it up to a point where we can enjoy the nature that's out there. And then the second bullet point was the fact that In all these meetings that we've held with the county commission, this is an open public forum, and we have not had anybody here vocally object to I've been to a lot of heated meetings where people wanted to put cell towers up on, up and block people's views, especially in St. George. You have all sorts of problems with light pollution. When Coral Canyon was built, they had to do everything downward facing lights. I've been involved with a lot of opposition where people, it makes sense why they're opposing it, and there's public there to voice that opposition. Nobody's been in attendance for these meetings to voice that opinion. We've had a couple of letters, and honestly, one letter, like I said, from Payson City, he admitted to us that he didn't even know what was in half that letter. And then the other letter I discussed it further with Becky that had sent a letter with some of her concerns. She didn't understand the whole concept of what's going on. She attended one meeting during the planning session after she realized, and I brought up the point that she only owned 2 acres. I mean, how can she refuse going to a 5-acre parcel when she only owns 2 acres? And, she hasn't been to any meetings since then. So the second thing is the question I had was, whose interest are we protecting if the public is not really outraged? There's no outrage, there's no opposition here voicing against this change that we've done for going on 2 years now. And then in part of dealing with that, I know Payson, when I met with the mayor yesterday, I could tell, he's all, we don't have a dog in the fight, do what you want, but I could tell he impressed strongly that, we rely on the county to protect our pristine atmosphere. And that, in my mind, cracked me up, because if he relies on you to protect the atmosphere that they can do what they want on, when you go up that canyon, they own the holding pond, those water towers right there up the canyon, and the access to that I know would never be approved, and it's never been approved, and it continues to be a constant hazard. But they do, and they build, and they improve what they want without having to go through the proper channels that we do, because everything that we've ever done, we're always trying to abide by the laws and principles of responsible development. And so that in my mind, it's like, well, they're relying on you to protect something so they can do what they want at any time and not have the regulations that they have to abide by. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm trying, I want to do one thing at a time, conquer one obstacle at a time, but I did go to Strawberry Electric, and I asked them, hey, why did you allow them to go aerial, and you made us go underground on the power line? And they said, because it was less expensive, and they told us to do it. And I'm just like, okay, so yeah, they can do what they want. We abide by what you want, what is going to be best for the public. And then the same with their access. Like I said, when you go up that canyon, you'll notice, and I brought it up before, every time it rains or snows, you have gravel that goes right across the road because their access is way too sheer, way too steep, and it creates a major hazard, constantly flowing over the road whenever there's rain. And when I brought it up, it's funny, word gets around, and they must have realized it because they dumped some chip and seal on it to try to slow it down a little bit, but they still haven't paved it. They still haven't done anything to try to eliminate that access right there up into their water towers. But it's still just something that surprises me, where they want us to protect. They're relying on you to protect their pristine nature, but in reality, it comes down to the people that live there, and that's where I'm just asking for some help. We have the 38 acres. I've tried to maintain as much as I can. We're constantly cutting down fuels that because there's a lot of dead trees that are coming up every summer with the dry creek bed, and so we try to reduce fuels. But with one landowner up there, my brother, he moved up there, and we've helped a little bit each other. But we're just trying to get a couple more homes up in there so that we can help each other out and reducing the fuels, reducing the hazards that exist up there, and then also abiding by every aspect of development that is required. We'll put fire and sprinkler suppression systems in our homes, doing that which is going to be required in a national hazard overlay. But anyhow, so those are the main 3 things I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Thank you.
So I got one question for you, though, because I haven't even asked you this question.
Yeah.
We were talking about a development contract. What you have the potential of, I can't remember how many, but 3 or 4 homes that could be on your property because of the frontage that you have. What would you be looking for if there was a development agreement in place? Would you be just looking for one more home?
So yes,
Would
immediately
you,
we
would
want.
you sign on to saying, okay, I'll put a development agreement in place, one more home?
We would do a development agreement, yes. The land up there does with the hills and valleys and also all the pipes that go through there. For the immediate future, yes, we really are just trying to have one home. With the hopes and aspirations, when I work fire right now, and in 20 years I'll retire. The home that we're building now is gonna be just a little bit bigger than the home we built, with my parents in mind. And so in 20 years from now, we would hope to one day build on our final lot, which would be on another 5-acre parcel.
That'd
So
be 2 homes.
At most 2 is what we're looking at. But that's at the immediate, but that's 20 years from now. To be honest, we don't care if that really doesn't come to fruition. Great, with the growth that's going on in the valley and the county, I would be surprised if that doesn't happen at some point. But for now, we just really want one home. And we could do a development agreement, yes.
Okay. Any questions for Aaron?
No, I appreciate, Aaron, I appreciate your work you've put in, your willingness to come and share your feelings and thoughts on it, and especially about your willingness for a development agreement. I'm kind of had some obstacles and hurdles to where I'm not really supportive of this change, but if we can put in a development agreement that I think gives us the protections, the resources, then it definitely opens up the possibility for me to be, as Commissioner Lee said, to try and be more flexible there, because I'll be straight honest with you, these are the hardest issues that I have to, to deal with when we look at these zonings and when we look at property rights and how do we do these things. They're challenging to work through on a facet of levels, and so I appreciate your willingness to come in and discuss and have a broader look at the issue.
Thank you.
Looks like we have another comment.
Good morning, Jed Morley. Good to see all of you. I appreciate all the work that you guys have put in, and especially Aaron, because for a long time you guys have had a lot of meetings, discussed a lot of options and a lot of issues there. And so being one of the property owners there that this would affect as well, I for the first time talked to Mayor Wright yesterday and did have the exact, it was with Aaron. And so I just want to confirm that meeting was in our office, and he did say the same things. He just said, basically, I've said my piece. We do have some of the issues that are not consistent with the letter, but irregardless, he did say, it's really your call. It's entirely up to you guys what you feel is right there. I can tell you though, having owned property and rode horses up and down that canyon, and we do that every single week, I used to live right at the mouth of the canyon, so we'd ride our mountain bikes and the trails and the access systems. I've had a call or two from the county engineering department about potential grant that they're looking at putting a trail system up the canyon. So we're really aware of what's going on there. Our goal is to maintain that property, to have it be a fun, open place where there is safety and protection. The biggest issue that I do see is that the water is diverted, so it does limit the critical environment. I don't think that it's as critical as it once was, and I also believe that when the fire happened last year and we get a call from the Federal Forest Service telling us that they want to back burn our ground because they have no other way to get in and access and that kind of thing, I do think having some development options and maintaining it does make it a lot more safe and a lot easier to utilize and get the full benefit than having it in what it is today. So thanks. Any questions?
Question? Yeah. I haven't had a chance to talk with you, so
Right.
This is the first time. As one of the property owners, if we did a development agreement, what would you be looking for?
So our focus is, right now, the zoning that we're in is, Brandon would have to help me actually, CE1, but we
1
actually
per
have an
50.
agricultural overlay or something like that on ours.
Okay.
Really, for us, we're just looking at saying we want to support, help improve
All right.
that. We're not looking to build or do anything right away, so it's not a major issue for us.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll bring it up here to the table for any further discussions. Any thoughts?
Question that I have is, I think what's before us is just adopting the ordinance. And there's been some discussion about potential other solutions or a development agreement, but none of that has come before this particular item.
Right.
So in terms of acting on this item, I don't know if, it would seem like the straight adoption of the ordinance, that would not be something that I would be supportive of. And I don't think we can, on the fly, include development agreements or something. So I think the issue is whether to deny or whether to strike,
Well,
unless you are thinking about this differently.
I think there's an ability for us, if we wanted to adopt it with the understanding that a development agreement was gonna be in place, meaning that if we agree the development agreement, then it would go into effect. If the development agreement does not come in a manner that seems, workable, then it would not be in effect. So that's kinda how.
If I was to make a motion on this today, mine would be to adopt the ordinance as stated, subject to a qualified and approved development agreement, signed by all parties. And if that development agreement was not reached, we could even set a time frame on that, then that would become an automatic denial and it would not come to fruition.
I would suggest that you just continue it so that there's no adoption of a zone change until a simultaneous approval of the development agreement. That would clarify whether that zoning place has taken effect or not. It would be a little clearer. That would be my recommendation.
And to me, it's
If that's what
semantics.
you're-
We're doing the same thing either way, right? We're saying, look, we're happy to look at this, but the only way I'm willing to look at it is with the development agreement that I approve.
I think that's the key word, is that there's gotta be a sense that we'd wanna go that direction so that you can work on a development agreement, because if there's not some sort of signal from the board that there's some, that we're entertaining it, then you're working on a development agreement without even some understanding of that there would be an adoption of that. It'd be a waste of time. If it's just a no, then it should just be a no.
Yeah, and if it's just continued without date to come back at the same time as a development agreement is ready to be approved, then the two actions could be taken simultaneously.
I'd be fine with that. Fine with that.
So in that case, I would move that we continue this item until such time that it can come together with a development agreement to be considered simultaneously.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second to continue item number 9, subject to the, development agreement. Yeah, some comments to that?
I'll let you finish.
It's just subject to that we have the zoning change and the development agreement in place at the same time, so we can act upon them both.
I guess my only point was maybe some guidance on the development agreement, kind of the purpose, kind of the, we're talking about limiting number of lots. Is there a number you have in mind? Usually use development agreements to either limit the number of lots or potentially have larger lot sizes.
And I think that it was stated that there was no desire to have more than 2 additional
Right.
building lots.
And so my thought on that development was to kind of go with this. There wasn't a desire to have more than 2 lots. From the other parties interested, that, there's not a desire, so their development agreement would be that it remains subject to its, current usage.
So there'd be an additional 2 lots on all of the acreage contemplated, owned by different parties.
No,
That's what I'm hearing.
on the Troyers, because you have 3 different owners.
Correct. And so the request is to rezone, the gentleman who spoke, Morley. His would be rezoned to the RA5 zone without a development agreement. He would have no restrictions
Oh, I
other
see
than
what
meeting the
you're saying.
RA5 zone.
For me, any property attached to this needs a development agreement.
And so that's what we'd put in there. There is no development agreement. If there was one in the future that was negotiated, then that's maybe a possibility, but this time there is. Because I think what you're saying is, without a development agreement, then it just becomes an RA5 and it's wide open.
Right.
So we'd have to limit that, however you limit that.
So Mr. Morley's would not be included? Or are we just talking about Troyers? Because if you want to include Mr. Morley's, then we would either just approve it as an RA5 zone subject to the RA5 zone, or offer a limit similar to Mr. Troyer's property, 1, 2, however many lots.
My perspective would be that the Troyers have articulated the density and the number of lots that they would want, and that would be the maximum level of density. that I would be looking to for the other landowners within this rezone.
I would
Individually
I
or
would concur with that.
collectively?
Each of them, so that's the Troyers have already kind of set the benchmark for,
Two per the landowners.
yeah, well, I mean, the Troyers actually end up with 4, right, on their property. 2 total? They already have 2, they already have 2
Oh,
in
I see.
Troy.
additional.
Two additional.
2 additional,
Four
right.
4 total.
So that's what I'm saying is that would be the standard
That would be the
on which
standard
to
on
look
which
to the other landowners.
And I would concur with Commissioner Ainge on that.
2 additional building lots on each property.
Well, either that or the density, the implied density that exists at the Troyers after the 2 additional lots. Because I think that the landowners have different acreage, right?
Yes.
So that's why I'm not sure it's equitable to just say
It's
2
not-
additional
Right,
lots.
it's not 2 additional if you've got 100 acres and you have 5, it's in a ratio.
Frontage.
I think at that point, the more of these would be pretty much what the RA5 zone allows anyway, because of their limitation on frontage, but we'll craft something and bring it back.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Work with them.
Yeah, I guess again, you know, the intent of this zone is an agricultural zone, and so, you know, we're trying to balance that with, that's kind of was the intent of our recommendation, but we'll go ahead and craft something and bring it back.
Thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, number 10 is to approve and authorize the commission chair to sign a contract for the county fire warden. We've worked down through this. We've had discussions with the state on this issue and trying to find a workable solution. Hopefully we're close. I think we're probably there.
Mhm.
Yes.
There was a few little minor changes.
Yes, pursuant to our discussions yesterday, I prepared a redlined revision, which I emailed out to the interested parties, and you have that before you, just to clarify the request for an additional position and the process for that, so.
Maybe, Court, could you just explain generally how these additions really help protect the county in this situation where a change was kind of forced upon us? So what
Well-
protections do you see us getting and additional control over this position? Does this help us with?
Well, the language, the additional position would be for an assistant fire warden. And the language, pretty much, the revision leaves that up to the discretion of the sheriff and the county commission. And without that request, then that position would not be funded.
That makes sense.
Any other questions? Okay, a motion would be in order then to approve and authorize the chair to sign the contract as with the additions that were the red line additions.
Move we approve regular agenda item number 10 with the noted changes in the current red line edition.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve and authorize that, what's stated number 10 with the red line additions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, we're down to our setting of our closed meetings. We need number 12, 14, and 15.
Move that we strike number 13?
Second?
Got a motion and a second to strike number 13 from our agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
I move that we approve items 12, 14, and 15 for closed sessions at this time, date, and location immediately following this meeting.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve the setting of the date, time, and location as stated number 12, 14, and 15. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. We have no work session items. Is there any public comment? Public comment?
Just real quickly, we just wanted to say that we have been working diligently to follow, John Calvin Bird. We've been working diligently to follow up with the pioneering agreement or a development agreement, and just wanted to kind of leave copies of each of those with you guys, and I've also gotten a contract from Questar that we just need to kind of bring them all together, and
Okay.
we will get scheduled on the next meeting, but thank you guys.
And you're leaving some documents with us?
I will. I will leave the documents with him, but if
And-
you'd like, I can run
And
copies
you're,
off with
you're,
everyone else.
you're fine that those documents are public, right? Public record?
I don't know if, I think it would probably be better at first until they're all negotiated, maybe that they're not.
I would probably suggest that you hold them then until, I mean, anytime documents come to us, we like to have them as
Public
they're
record.
public documents.
Okay,
Okay,
we'll be in touch. Thank
Okay.
you.
thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move into our closed meetings.